Imagine standing at the doorway of a stone cottage in County Cork, Ireland, 1846. The morning mist clings to the hills, but something feels wrong. Your father kneels in the potato field behind the house, his hands black with rot as he pulls up yet another diseased plant. The stalks that were green and promising just days ago now drip with a foul-smelling slime. Your mother clutches your younger sister to her chest, her face pale with a terror you've never seen before. This is the moment your family realizes everything has changed. The potatoes, the crop that has sustained your family for generations, the food that forms the core of every meal, are failing. And in Ireland, when the potatoes fail, people face a deadly crisis. Your father stands slowly, dirt falling from his trembling fingers. He looks towards the distant harbour, toward the ships that sail west to America, and you see a decision forming in his eyes. A decision that will tear your family from the only home you've ever known and send you across an ocean into the unknown. This is how it began for over 1 million Irish souls. Not with hope, but with desperation. The Great Irish Famine was more than a crop failure. It was a catastrophe that reshaped the destiny of an entire nation. In 1845, a microscopic organism called Phytophthora infestans arrived in Ireland, likely introduced from abroad. This water mold spread rapidly across the Irish countryside, turning potato fields into blackened, putrid wastelands within days. For a population of about 8 million, nearly half of whom relied heavily on the potato, this was a life-threatening event. Why were so many Irish people dependent on a single crop? The answer lies in centuries of colonial oppression. Under British rule, Irish Catholics had been denied land ownership and pushed onto increasingly smaller plots of poor soil. The potato, nutritious and high-yielding, became the only crop capable of sustaining families on an acre or two. When the blight struck repeatedly, 1845, 1846, 1847 and beyond, it exposed the fragility of this way of life. Families who had lived in chronic poverty were now faced with starvation. The poorest suffered first, and the crisis spread across society like a dark tide. The British government's response was tragically inadequate. Constrained by a mix of laissez-faire ideology and political mismanagement, officials delayed relief measures, limited public works, and offered soup kitchens with meagre rations. Meanwhile, grain, meat and dairy from Ireland continued to be exported under legal authority, even as people starved. By 1847, remembered as Black 47, Ireland was a land of ghosts. Disease followed famine. Typhus, dysentery, and relapsing fever swept through a weakened population. Villages were partially abandoned, and mass graves held the unnamed dead. Mothers watched their children waste away, powerless to save them. In this hell, a single option emerged: emigration. America became a whispered word of desperate hope. The journey to America was a trauma that would mark Irish immigrants for generations. Families sold everything they could, furniture, tools, even cooking pots, to pay for passage. Many walked dozens of miles to ports like Cork, Galway or Liverpool, carrying their few remaining possessions in cloth bundles. The fortunate had relatives in America who sent money. The desperate borrowed at crushing interest rates, entering debts that would follow them across the ocean. The ships that carried them became known as coffin ships, and the name was earned in blood and suffering. These were often the oldest, least seaworthy vessels, pressed into service because shipping companies knew they could fill them with desperate people. Hundreds of passengers might be crammed into spaces meant for far fewer. The crossing to North America took anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, depending on weather and the ship's condition. Families huddled together in dark, airless holds, rarely allowed above deck. They survived on meager, inconsistent rations, flour, water, and sometimes salted meat, barely enough to sustain life. Disease transformed these vessels into floating coffins. Typhus, or ship fever, spread rapidly, followed by cholera and dysentery. The sick had nowhere to isolate, no medical care, no hope. Many bodies were sewn into canvas or simply thrown overboard as families watched their loved ones disappear into the waves. Ships arriving at quarantine stations like Grosse Isle in Canada revealed scenes of horror. Doctors found dead and dying passengers lying among the living. In 1847 alone, thousands perished on the ships or shortly after landing, and thousands more would follow. Those who survived the crossing arrived traumatized, weakened and grieving. But they had reached America. The America that greeted Irish famine immigrants was not the promised land they had imagined, but it offered something Ireland could not: survival. Most ships landed in Boston, New York, Philadelphia or New Orleans. Irish immigrants stepped into cities already struggling with waves of poor arrivals. Many had no money, no contacts, and no skills beyond farming. They settled in the cheapest, most overcrowded neighborhoods, slums and tenements shunned by native-born Americans. In New York, Irish families packed into the Five Points district, often sharing a single building with dozens of others and no running water. In Boston, they crowded into cellars and attics in the North End. Disease struck in waves, cholera outbreaks ravaging Irish neighborhoods. Infant mortality was alarmingly high. The Irish faced virulent prejudice. No Irish need apply signs appeared in shop windows. Newspapers published cruel caricatures depicting the Irish as violent or unintelligent. Protestant Americans viewed Catholic immigrants with suspicion. The Know-Nothing political movement organized explicitly against Irish influence in Owls, railroads and cities. The work was brutal and dangerous, and thousands died constructing America's infrastructure. Irish women entered domestic service, working as maids and cooks, sending money home or saving to bring over family members. Yet the Irish persevered. Catholic parishes became centers of community life, providing schools, hospitals, and orphanages. Mutual aid societies helped the sick and buried the dead. Irish saloons and clubs offered spaces to gather, share news, and organize politically. Over time, the Irish began to climb. The second generation spoke English fluently. They became teachers, police officers, firefighters, and politicians. Political machines like Tammany Hall in New York helped new immigrants find work and housing in exchange for votes. By the late 19th century, Irish Americans had transformed the face of American society. Irish men found work as laborers, building Rome-despised refugees into an integral part of society. The Great Irish Famine and the migration it forced changed two nations forever. Ireland's population, which stood at over 8 million in 1845, had fallen to about 6 million by 1851, roughly 1 million dead from starvation and disease, and another million scattered across the globe. The trauma left deep scars in Irish identity that remain visible today. From that suffering emerged resilience. The Irish who reached America, who survived coffin ships and slums, who endured prejudice and back-breaking labor, built lives of dignity and possibility. They transformed America, bringing music, faith, political savvy, and fierce loyalty to family and community. Today, over 30 million Americans claim Irish ancestry, a diaspora born from catastrophe. Every Irish-American family carries a story of ancestors who stood in blackened potato fields and made impossible choices, who crossed an ocean in fear, and who landed in a strange land with nothing but determination. The Great Migration was not a triumph. It was a tragedy. But from that tragedy came survival, hope, and ultimately endurance. The Irish who fled the famine didn't just survive, they persisted, built communities, and helped shape the nation they entered.